Good evening. Welcome to Mountain Bears. I'm Aeson, and of course, I'm sitting down with Cubby with us. This is Techy Joe. How are you, darling?
I'm doing well. How are you this evening?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good. Trying to work on some things. Got a new couple projects on the board and getting some interesting, and I do mean interesting reports. Coming out of DNC. Well, in
Arns.
Yeah. But leading, however, is your story.
Oh, my story?
The data system crashing.
Oh, yeah. So CloudStrike.
Yeah.
It's been a fun day. So CloudStrike, lovely little company, and there's a few like them, that basically provide a very supportive service for large companies. So if you're unaware, this is why, you currently can't have elective surgery, book an appointment, get into your booked appointment, get a plane, maybe pull out money, maybe work a credit card. Lots of things are down right now. So what we're basically finding out are the number of companies that use CrowdStrike, and the number of companies running on Windows.
Right.
So yes, and deploying it on their servers in addition to their general username.
Right.
So yeah, it's taken down a lot of things. Like Visa was down, I believe, at one point.
Right.
I think it's like Delta and United Airlines, and there's so much down right now.
There is a lot going down.
So the part of the software that malfunctioned was a driver update manager.
Right.
And this one little piece, basically, if I understand correctly, it declared a Windows driver invalid.
Right.
Causing a reboot loop. So basically it quarantined a Windows driver and said, don't use that, and forced it into a blue screen loop. So the computer tries to boot, or the server tries to boot. It hits this driver that it needs to load, and it reboots.
Okay.
So a lot of things down. So many things down. And the unfortunate reality is, for a distributed software package, because this is meant to be just deployed through your entire system, and you can work from anywhere in the world and manage all these systems. The fix for this requires you to have physical presence and access to the machine to force it into safe mode, to then do a quick manual change.
Right.
None of which can be handled remotely.
Right.
Like, you physically have to touch it. So it's been a day. It's going to be a very long weekend.
I think it'll be a long weekend for a lot of companies. There's a lot of tech dudes that are in the office.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I know in the IT groups, there's a few people that took vacation starting Friday.
Right.
That are I managed to avoid this whole thing.
I wonder, however, how many abusive managers are on the phone demanding, get your ass in here.
You know, I that's not really the manager or the executives I'm worried.
Right.
I am worried about the number of companies because we're a very globally connected world. A lot of these, you don't have to work for a company that's directly affected to be impacted right now.
Right.
I more so wonder how many
Right.
companies that use a vendor that is
Right.
impacted right now have been on the phone yelling and screaming.
Right. I think there's a number that have been on the phone yelling and screaming, but I also think that there are vendors that are sub vendors to the vendor that are going, "What the hell?" Because exactly, like my industry, clients aren't able to recharge. They haven't been able to recharge for a couple hours this morning, and it may be a quiet weekend.
It could be. It could be. The reality though is that look, many of these systems, and again, when we say servers, we still have this very old model of how businesses work, and that there is a singular server. That's a dead concept.
Right.
Like if you're running a business with a single server, in 2024, I don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few things that can still
Right.
fully function and be reasonable on a single server. A lot of what we do now is either like leased data centers, so you're
Right.
leasing space inside of a data center. Cloud computing, in which you're basically paying. It's basically a lease, but you don't actually own it. It's a rental.
Right.
You're renting servers in that cloud space. And so what ends up happening is you start like finding out how many companies actually have physical access to these
Right.
systems, and how many companies are now beholden to like a data center company,
Right.
to a cloud computing company,
Right.
and how fast they can bring their systems back online. Additionally, even if you do still have your own data center,
Mm-hmm.
like, airlines mostly still have their own data centers.
Right.
Like they invested, they had to functionally. At such a long ago point, I think most are still carrying the data center concept forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe you might run into like maybe Virgin, Spirit, JetBlue, like they're baby enough to pretend, like as in the age of the company.
Right.
They're young enough they may have gone a different
Right.
direction. But your big major long-term carriers
Right.
that were from the prehistorics
Right.
are probably running their own data centers. So that's a functional like differential. Is
Mm-hmm.
right now they may be totally down, or were this morning, and hence why flights were canceled. They were totally down. They can deploy their IT resources, their peoples, and get those systems back up and running. What?
Mm-hmm.
But then you may see issues with, if you're talking about a smaller airline
Right.
that's running off of a cloud computing environment, a rented data or a leased data space environment. They might be longer, because the funny part about data centers
Mm-hmm.
is they actually end up having far fewer employees,
Right.
many more systems,
Right.
most of which are going to need to be manually done. Now, part of that may also include that some of these systems are going to be virtualized in a data center environment.
Right.
So there may be a better time frame on it because you don't have as much physical movement. because it is a virtual machine.
Right.
Yeah, that's basically the environment that we're computing in, and we have so many dependencies.
Right.
Like the idea that we originally had of you having a Visa card or a MasterCard or an Amex card and this one central agency, and you really have to back up to the point in which you the card slips where you made a physical carbon imprint of the card for that whole like functional model to be true. Now this is all based on you have the network system, which is like Visa, MasterCard, Amex, etc., whatever that is. You have all the banks that issue cards on their behalf, Amex being the exclusion, Discover being the exclusion. They work a little different. But Visa and MasterCard being your two biggest, that have to connect to all the issuing banks, and there's a data interchange system.
Right.
In order to process a credit card, a business has to have a terminal system that connects to a merchant account that connects to that interlinking data system,
Right.
the Visa card, MasterCard network. So you start having multiple points of failure possible for merchant transactions. And when I say merchant transactions, I mean if you go to a grocery store or a metaphysical shop, or you go online to your favorite website and you try to buy something. All of these are done through different means and methods.
Right.
And it may take a while to fix all the different potential points of it.
Yeah.
Even if Visa is happily back up and running. That's like a small piece of it. I know Australia was hit the hardest.
They were, and we've seen the platforms for the Australian markets shift a little quickly. Because platforms plan for outstakes.
They do, but there's sometimes it's a struggle, in which sometimes figuring out what to plan for and whether that's a reasonable backup to have in place.
Right.
So the idea that your technology management software is going to be your point of failure.
Right.
Do you really want to invest the money to have a whole alternate system?
Right.
Or do you want to deal with the issue?
Right.
So that's where a lot of this comes into is it's an unfortunate choke point that is near impossible to plan around.
Right.
So, in case you're wondering, it's not a cyber attack. Like, and that's the irony in all this is like this is such like bare bones basic oopsie daisy that it really for the level of problem it's creating, like little tiny mistake, massive world impact. It almost seems inconceivable,
right?
And it's why a lot of conspiracy theories are starting to pop up. That this was a planned government event, this was a cyber attack, that this is China, this is blah blah blah, this is blah blah blah. Nope. Sadly, nope. Fortunately, nope as well. Because if this were actually a planned attack, it would not be nearly as fixable.
Right. But, if you've got remote desktops and, computers that are for the company, they're going to have to get those from the remote workers to the company to get this boot sequence fixed.
And that's a large part of the malfunction or the delay is one, getting physical people on physical locations to touch physical machines and perform manual labor. It's going to be a very long weekend.
Right.
Like, the fix isn't hard.
Right.
Like, most users could be walked through it.
Right.
If we were talking about a problem that had a low enough effect rate, meaning that it affected a low enough number of people and systems. But honestly, at the point in which you deploy people on site, just move. Just back up and let them fix it. Because it's actually less time consuming at that point.
Right.
So yeah, things will be popping back online. I would say that probably, like, a lot of things should be back online by now. A lot more things should be back online either by tomorrow morning, like like as in the end of morning, to late tomorrow evening. And then it'll probably be a bunch of little things for Sunday and Monday. So I'm basically calling it as, except for companies that, decided we'll deal with this on Monday.
Right.
Because that was an option for some companies. Because there was a lot of effects. I think Epic Systems, and I'm trying to remember the other one. It's a newer company, so it doesn't stick in my brain.
Right.
But it's an EMR system. Again, a lot of the electronic medical record systems aren't just used by hospitals.
Right.
They're also used by independent practices.
Right.
And group practices and all the other practices. So there should be a fair number of those that I kind of expect will still be waiting to come back online till Monday.
Wow.
So I'd say if you have a doctor's appointment,
Double check.
Might want to.
You want to double check, make sure they're going to be open, all that.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, someone thought it was important to text during a show.
Wow.
Like they tend to do. As soon as they see we go live, they immediately want to talk instead of, I don't know, coming over to the stream.
Hey, come over to the stream.
So there's this little rally in Milwaukee called the Republican National Convention that's causing quite a stream and quite an issue.
Yeah, so the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel brings us, did gay dating app Grindr crash during the RNC in Milwaukee? Oh, here we go. So, are hookups on the rise during the Republican National Convention this week? According to Google search trends, that has been one of the hot topics on people's minds in Milwaukee, particularly regarding gay dating app Grindr, which has seen a flood of unconfirmed reports that it's continually crashing during the convention. But what's really happening on Grindr this week, one user in Milwaukee said there has been a major bump in anonymous users. On any given day, you'll go there and see a headless torso or blank profile, said the source, who did not want to be named. He explained that the profile typically means a user is looking for a fling and not a relationship. You're on Grindr. Of course you're looking for a fling, not a relationship. But more. The Grindr user said on a normal day, you'll encounter maybe 10 users with no profile photo. But Thursday, when he checked the app, he said he stopped counting at 50 blank profile photos. If that's the case, it aligns with Grindr activity during previous national conventions. So after the 2016 RNC in Cleveland, a Vice article that cited sources from Grindr said the area around the 2016 convention's main hub saw user traffic increase by 66%. Other Grindr hotspots like Times Square, Capitol Hill, Disneyland, and South Beach, Florida, saw no comparable increase in user traffic at the time, the article said. So Democrats flocked to the app during their convention, too. The same article said Grindr reported a 148% increase in activity around Philadelphia's Wells Fargo Arena during the week of the 2016 DNC. Grindr did not immediately respond to a request for comment about an increase in usage or reported outages during the 2024 RNC, and according to status.grindr.com, no operational incidents have been recorded by Grindr since May, when partial outages for the grid, chat, and albums features were noted. In June and July, all Grindr features were 100% operational, according to the app's official status track. But that's not stopping users from taking the matter into their own hands. Reports of the Grindr app crashing increased by more than 90% in the past 48 hours across the country, according to Down Detector, a digital platform that tracks service issues among apps. Down Detector's heat map shows where the Grindr outages are taking place. Milwaukee is one of a few hotspots for outages, according to the website. Those reports may have spawned from a recent post by @TheHalfwayPost, a political satire account on Twitter. Breaking. An executive of the gay dating app Grindr says the Republican National Convention is basically Grindr's Super Bowl. The Post claimed to quote a Grindr executive who allegedly said that the Republican National Convention is basically Grindr's Super Bowl. As of Thursday morning, the Post has nearly 50 million views. Former Republican New York Congressman George Santos was one of them. Santos, who was expelled from Congress earlier this year for misuse of campaign funds and committing federal crimes, responded to the satirical tweet with a sincere message to any potentially closeted gay conservatives. I mean, if your Republican it gets better is George Santos. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that, but there's got to be a better spokesperson for it gets better.
Yes.
Or the concept of it.
Although I love his this is the only thing that I probably will ever feature on this show by this man.
Oh.
Come out, boys. Come out of the closet.
Okay, we're not getting sound?
Oh.
Oopsie daisy.
Oopsie daisy. See if I can make that happen. Pause. Presentation. Share the screen. Sorry, guys. I'm getting used to doing this.
Executives are calling the RNC convention the Grindr Super Bowl. Folks, look, I'm openly gay, no qualms about it, proud conservative Republican. I met my husband on Grindr, and we've been together for 6 years going on 7, married for almost 3. Let me tell you something. Just come out the closet, boys. Come on. It's fun. You can be gay and conservative. But look, Grindr's already out of you anyway based on the hits. And guess who's in town? It's all you conservatives. Bye.
He's not wrong. This has been an ongoing report.
It has.
Like multiple years, multiple events. Like, and I found it funny. We were having this as sort of, so to speak, a dinner table conversation. We went out to eat and we were talking in the car as well. But no, that like, and I was surprised because Invisible was having a whole moment with the idea of, wait, what? I'm like, oh yeah. There's this weird phenomenon that has occurred for several companies.
Right.
And it started with trying.
Well, he freezes. Give him a second. But no, I find it highly interesting that they are. There's a lot of organizations. This will lead into our next story. Welcome back.
Yeah. So anyway, a lot of companies ran reports to figure out what was going
on. Right. But, preparing for something very big in your city takes a lot of work, a lot of handling. Now, Brenda, I'm not sure that Baby Dog would be on Grindr. I think they'd be more of on Fit Life.
I don't think Baby Dog's kinky.
Puppy play.
Oh, no. No, that's not puppy play. That's just a puppy. Oh, my.
Truth. Grindr, although has a history with the Republicans, they have threatened to release.
Well, multiple companies have.
Uh-huh.
Like Pornhub especially has been quite upset about legislation surrounding adult work, sex work, excuse me. And the whole trying to legislate the porn out of industry.
Right.
And going, oh, you think it's going to get better if you legislate us out of functionality?
Right.
Let me tell you, this is the organized, less chaotic version.
Right.
Because you don't want to know what's going to happen. If this starts going into the deep recesses of the internet, and foul trading sites and the dark web and all of this, you please don't.
Right.
Like,
and you were saying this when you're frozen and no one heard you, but you were talking about like Massage Finder crashing. Rent-A-Boy crashed.
Well, yeah, when we were in the car, actually. Like Rent Boy, I think, has had issues during the convention. I'd forgotten. I don't think Massage Book itself is actually technically, but there is a site similar it's more erotic massage.
It's Massage Finder.
Okay, Massage Finder. But yeah, no, multiple sites have kind of had this moment in which they saw a massive uptick. Craigslist used to, like, they would see a massive influx. And what happens with these companies is it's not an intent to figure out, oh my God, there's, a lot of people doing gay hookups or the gay sex or the whatever. They're legitimately trying to figure out whether or not they're under, and this kind of dovetails with our first story a little, a cyber attack, a denial of service attack, if they're being botted. Like, what's going on? Why? Like, we know roughly what our average daily traffic is. We roughly know how many people post per day. We roughly know what our functional service looks like day to day to day. And so they're kind of having an incident response mode.
Right.
Where they think that this is, well, because it's abnormal traffic. And anytime you're running, especially massive sites and even smaller sites, when you see a sudden random spike in traffic or a random spike in posting, your first thought isn't, wow, I wonder how many gays are in town causing this. It really isn't. Your actual first thought is, oh God, we're under attack. Like, someone's trying to take down the site, someone's trying to brute force their way into the site, someone like this, what's wrong? Only to come to find out there's nothing wrong.
Site's just getting used.
The site's being very heavily used because there is a singular large event. Like, a lot of people in one small geographic area.
Right.
And they're all attempting to do similar activities that, even in the instance of the RNC, that you would not normally expect.
Right.
But it happens with a number of different events. Like they said, the DNC does the same thing to traffic for Grindr and
Right.
But
With less headless profiles, though.
potentially.
Yeah.
Again, you can get into situations where people aren't out, but you will see, regardless of what the actual profiles are, you'll see a large spike in traffic. I'm sure Sniffies has had the same moment, which is another Grindr-like app. Well,
Right.
I guess. But no, like a lot of services will start random spikes in traffic, and weird activity. Like this isn't, So there's started to become this idea that like these are things you actually have to think about and plan for,
Right.
that aren't in necessarily your own control.
Right.
Well, like Grindr starts running flipping ads during the Super Bowl for Grindr. It's not like, there's a great big giant billboard outside, the Republican National Convention. No one's getting, like little postcards in a swag bag going, log into Grindr. Like, here's the link to download the app. Like, that's not occurring. You as a company, you're not actively engaging this traffic. It's just happening organically. So you have to start anticipating, like, okay, well, if this is a every 4-year event, every 2-year event, every annual event, whatever the event space is, you have to start anticipating this is going to happen.
Now, on the other side of this, I found this story interesting because it really brought up a huge point. NRC, the sex trafficking prevention advocates are ready to help, was the headline. Fox News 6, thank you for covering. Apparently, go for it.
So as 50,000 people converge on Milwaukee for the Republican National Convention next week, organizations say everyone should be on the lookout for sex trafficking. We will do a same-day intake. We will do everything we can to help them, said Debbie Lassiter, Convergence Resource Center founder and CEO. We're ready, and we're ready to partner with people that also want to help. Convergence Resource Center is an organization that works to end sex trafficking. For the past 7 years, Lassiter has traveled to the Super Bowl and rescued victims. If it's anything like the Super Bowl, there are going to be people brought here against their will, she said. Researchers said evidence is mixed that more people in town means more instances of sex trafficking, but advocates said it's also a chance to raise awareness. So, quote, really maximize the opportunity of having so many people in our city to be able to share the steps that can be taken to help address and prevent sex trafficking, said Constance Kostelak of the Medical College of Wisconsin. Kostelak helped write an MCW report on sex trafficking ahead of the convention. And before anyone sits here and has the moment in which you directly connect like Republicans to this, that's not what this is about. Like, let's be very careful with that. I don't want to give the impression that like, oh, Republicans are sex traffickers. No, but when you bring large groups of people into an area, you do see oftentimes a higher demand for sex workers, which in turn becomes a supply and demand model for sex traffickers. So they basically reallocate people from other areas to be in the same town as an event, knowing that
the property exists, knowing that most likely after you look at 2016, 28, 2008, they see the same pattern of behavior.
yeah, you start seeing rent boy sites crashing. You see escort, massage finder, like reporting and commentating on the fact that they have massive upticks in traffic and demand. So, unfortunately, the problem with organized crime and organized criminal activity is these are not bad business people. They're actually very good at doing a very bad thing.
Right.
Let's always clarify that. It does not necessarily mean, however, that, you know, your random RNC visitor that's actually there for the convention is a sex trafficker, but they may not understand that they are dealing with sex traffickers. They're not working with a local sex worker population,
right,
as much as they are causing, as the part of their attendance, for sex trafficking victims to be brought into the area, and that's who they're connecting with. That it's kind of a mixed up thing to have to sit here and talk about. Especially as much as conservative circles have talked so strongly and heavily against sex trafficking.
Well, not only that, but also sex work and, you know, sex in general. You know, the conservatives are highly against all forms of that and have pushed an agenda.
Well, at least in terms of talking.
Right.
Like that's kind of the oddity.
Right.
It is, but then we've also seen that in a number, like there have been a number of reports, and one recently really struck out because it seems to kind of keep happening. Are the number of people who attend events and rallies against like child porn and child exploitation that have been found to have child porn and are engaged in exploiting children.
Right.
And it's kind of a, how does that work?
And why does that work? You know, like, what is this?
Like, you know, it's one of those things you don't, it's kind of like you don't expect necessarily. And there's not a real great analogy. It's kind of, well, maybe there is. You don't expect, like, no, there's no good analogy. But anyway, you don't expect for a turnout of an event that is against a thing for there to be attendees that are part of the anti-movement of the thing.
Right.
Or then actively engaging in the thing they're there to protest against.
Right.
It's, wait, what? It's sort of like, you know, an abortion. The best analogy I think I could give would be, it's sort of like finding out that an abortion protester has a 5 p.m. appointment.
Right.
And it's like, what? You're like, what? Why are you here protesting if you're then at, you know, like 5 o'clock into the day, you're going to go in and have an abortion?
Right.
Like, wait, what? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. And it doesn't. It doesn't make any sense for so many reasons. Most of them being problematical, most of them being like, okay, so it's okay for you to be, you know, example, be on Grindr, but you're going to go and spend 2 hours speaking at a convention
about taking away gay rights,
right?
And, you know, one man, one woman marriage, and
right.
The wonderful beauty of whatever we're calling it this week out of the Heritage Foundation and their agenda or plan or project, or again, it's gone through a name change. And at this point, it's fully expected to go through another and another and another.
Right, which the
Yeah,
Heritage Foundation could be in trouble.
if that is the thing that destroys them.
Well, because of all this stuff, there's a few TikTokers like showing you how to file complaints.
Absolutely. I mean, it's again, it's one of those moments. It's, and I don't know. I kind of feel good about that.
Mm-hmm.
That it means that there's some amount of sinking in that's occurring of like the realities of LGBTQ people in our day-to-day life. If you are actively concerned and ashamed, embarrassed, at least to the point you do not want to be publicly associated, it at least shows that it's like, even if you haven't fully formed the concept that what you're doing is wrong,
right,
that you at least know there's something inappropriate about being attached to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's progress. It's moving the needle a little. It's, when the big, loud, angry mob starts to want to hide, it's at least acknowledgement that something we're doing is wrong.
Right.
That it has public consequence. It means people have at least started to evaluate their choices.
Right.
Even if they haven't fully formed the idea.
Exactly.
So there is that.
So let's talk about this TikToker that's going viral.
Oh, fun. So TikTokers are trying to report the backers of the project to the IRS. They're trying to report it for engaging in political activity by promoting the uber conservative policy plan. A TikToker went viral on Monday for a video where she claimed that the Heritage Foundation support for former President Donald Trump and promotion of a policy program, which we're not going to name because it's messed up a lot of spaces,
right,
could jeopardize its nonprofit status. And she urged people to report the think tank to the IRS. So, quote, "Stop scrolling if you want to help take down the Heritage Foundation," read the caption on Morgan Branning's TikTok on Monday. In the video, Branning explained that 501c3 tax-exempt organizations like the Heritage Foundation are prohibited from endorsing or supporting political candidates, including by writing and publishing a political manifesto during a presidential campaign. The Heritage Foundation is indeed a tax-exempt 501c3 organization, which is categorized as a research institute for the benefit of society and the public. The conservative think tank took in $106 million in 2022 and spent $93.7 million the same year. Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation, appeared on the conservative broadcast Real American Voice last week, endorsing the program and celebrating the Supreme Court's immunity ruling for official acts by the president. Despite all this nonsense from the left, we are going to win. We are in the process of taking this country back. Roberts, who's tied to institutionalized Trumpism in his role as head of the Heritage Foundation, said. Our side is winning, Roberts went on. We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be. Comments like those and a recent messaging push by the Democratic Party have thrust the plan into the public spotlight, leading Trump to disavow it last Friday, saying he had no idea who is behind it. I disagree with some of the things they're saying, and some of the things they're saying are absolutely ridiculous and abysmal. Anything they do, I wish them luck, but I have nothing to do with them, Trump said in a post on Truth Social. However, Trump has deep ties to the Heritage Foundation. The group has written glowingly of his Supreme Court appointees and said they helped shape his list of nominees. According to the IRS, 501c3 organizations can't publish or distribute printed statements or make oral statements on behalf of or in opposition to a candidate for public office. Consequently, a written or oral endorsement of a candidate is strictly forbidden. The Heritage Foundation and the project includes many of Trump's former White House advisors, but the organization is careful not to explicitly endorse any candidates. But as the project has come more prominently into the public eye in recent weeks, Democratic activists have chosen to make the organization a target and push to cancel the organization's exempt status. Branning pointed to an IRS exempt complaint form called Form 13909, which allows people to report organizations they think are in breach of the law, and provided an example complaint for her followers to fill it in with. The Heritage Foundation has been widely revealed as the architects of the project, and has shown very outspoken support for presidential candidate Donald J. Trump. Branning wrote in her complaint, pointing to Roberts' comments. This is political and in violation of the rules of the Internal Revenue Code, Section 501c3, which prohibits tax-exempt organizations from engaging in political activity as a whole, both directly and indirectly, whether they are showing support or opposition. The Heritage Foundation holds a tax-exempt status per 501c3 and therefore has engaged in numerous violations of such code. Action must be taken and these standards upheld, she finished. Branning's TikTok racked up 650,000 views and 140,000 likes. The Heritage Foundation didn't immediately respond to questions about whether they believe Roberts' comments could call into question their tax-exempt status or if their employees had behaved appropriately when it came to respecting rules on endorsements. A community poster on Daily Cause also suggested calling the Heritage Foundation's tax-exempt status into question by reporting it to the IRS last Sunday, but not everybody was optimistic that the effort would be successful. Highly unlikely. My org has been paying close attention to Heritage lately. All of their verbiage is carefully crafted to sound nonpartisan enough to get them off the hook, posted one commenter. Also, at this point, IRS is highly reluctant to pursue 501c3 violations, though perhaps in a second Biden term they can be persuaded, a few lawsuits might help, to take gloves off and put hands on. Branning didn't immediately respond to questions about how she got the idea to make the TikTok or how many people she heard followed through. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. It's basically the end of the article. And I think that's the key important point of like how we got here. Mm-hmm. Is there are a number of 501c3 and other organizations under the 501 code that are not supposed to be political.
Right.
They are social organizations. They are not supposed to endorse candidates, endorse legislation. Like, this isn't what they're built for. They are purely social entities. Mm-hmm. There's a whole other section, mm-hmm. nonprofits, for political organizations.
Those nonprofits have to pay taxes on what they get in. They don't get the same tax exempt status.
It's not really the tax exempt status that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's how the money gets taken in, used, and spent.
Right.
Because when you're a political committee, which mm-hmm. is technically what those organizations are, and we see them all the time, backed by Trump PAC, backed by blah, blah, blah PAC, political action committees are a different section of the nonprofits. Mm-hmm. They're allowed to do all the political speech they want to. Mm-hmm. They just have to declare who it's from, right. And then you have to be very careful with the money.
Right.
I think it's till if I remember correctly, it's still tax exempt.
Right.
But there's limits to how much can be donated.
Right.
Like the money auditing process is a complete nightmare.
Right.
And it's again meant to prohibit shadow endorsements and weird shadowy money moves and using it as a piggy bank, and like there's a whole bunch of things you're not supposed to do with them.
Right.
That you don't necessarily see because it's never supposed to occur on a typical 501c3.
Right.
Because if you're not allowed to back a candidate, you're not allowed to make political donations, you're not allowed to, then none of this should occur.
Right.
But the IRS has been a little lax about 501c3.
Yeah, they've been a little busy. All right, so let's go into some brighter news, shall we? In South Korea.
All right. So South Korea top court upholds right to state health benefits for gay couples. Activists welcome the ruling, but systemic discrimination persists in the country where gay marriage is not legally recognized. South Korea's top court has said that the state must provide health insurance for same-sex partners. The Supreme Court delivered the landmark ruling on Thursday, opening the way for common law couples, the same sex, to now register as dependents on their partner's health insurance. Chief Justice Joe Heedy said that denying same-sex couples such benefits because of gender constitutes discrimination based on sexual orientation. It is an act of discrimination that violates human dignity and value, the right to pursue happiness, freedom of privacy, and the right to equality before the law, and the degree of violation is serious, Joe said. The case was brought by So Seong-wook and Kim Young-min, a cohabiting gay couple whose marriage in 2019 is not considered legal under South Korean law, which does not recognize same-sex marriage. So sued the National Health Insurance Service because it terminated benefits for his partner, registered as a dependent, after discovering they were a gay couple. Thursday's ruling upholds a decision last year in which the Seoul High Court found in favor of the couple, mandating that the NHIS reinstate the dependent benefits. The service, which grants spousal coverage benefits by common law partners, appealed the decision, escalating the case to the Supreme Court. Amnesty International said the ruling was a historic victory for equality and human rights in South Korea. While this decision is a major milestone, the case itself is a sobering reminder of the lengthy judicial process that same-sex couples must endure to secure basic rights that should be universally guaranteed, the rights group said in the statement. While the country does not recognize same-sex marriage, gay relationships are not criminalized, but LGBTQ people tend to live largely under the radar. Activists have long emphasized the need for legislation against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. A much-discussed anti-discrimination law has languished in the South Korean parliament for years due to lack of consensus among MPs.
Kind of interesting.
Okay.
They're going to get health coverage
Before marriage.
Before marriage rights. I also find it interesting the justice's words. This is an egregious, serious act of discrimination.
Yeah. Oh, it's kind of a repeat of, the late 90s in the U.S., I think it was. Because being able to register as domestic partners and receive benefits was one of the earlier struggles. And like how, and it's kind of what kicked off getting the whole gay marriage thing, which was never actually in the U.S. what anyone originally shot for.
Right.
It was like, we just want the spousal benefit.
Right.
Like, that's it. Like, you don't have to give us marriage. We just want to be protected in our homes and our bank accounts and not discriminated against at work and have spousal benefits and retirement benefits and some of the protections and benefits afforded married couples that
Mhm.
typically you don't even have a problem with, like common law marriage, or even considering for just a partner that you're not married to.
Right.
But when you put two men, two women
Mhm.
on this form
Mhm.
for health insurance, or for life insurance, or for, it becomes a whole different ballgame.
It did. It really did, and it's getting better, but worse at times. Does that make sense?
Because it is a serious problem in some relationships to not have health insurance.
Right.
Or at least was in the United States, and especially at the time, like that was the apex of health insurance nightmares. That, I mean, technically that was the turning point of how bad it was going to get.
Right.
Is what I should say. That's like when we started up like shit fuck mountain on health
Right.
insurance, and medical, and the whole thing. But in terms of gay couples, there was a massive problem there
Right.
with the concept of every one of my coworkers could have added a spouse for $100 or a couple $100. Very easily, or for many employers at the time, you could add a spouse for free.
Right.
And it wasn't a big deal. To then turn around and have the problem of, but you don't recognize our
Mhm.
relationship
Right.
as being worthy of benefits. Like, you could have added a different sex spouse. You could have added a different sex partner.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were a lot of things you could do, but you couldn't just run out, get married, and add your husband.
Right.
Run out and get married and add your wife. And it's like, so the only way this becomes the same thing is if I can do a partner swap, at least for the physical form.
Mm-hmm.
Is, my coworker marries my wife, and I marry their, other half, and then we can both get the same benefit.
Right.
But we've got to lie.
Yeah. Was ridiculous. Or,
Like,
the larger, more older insanity was, I'll just adopt you.
which was an even weirder way to go about that, but it was one of the only ways originally to manage inheritance.
Right.
And next of kin.
Right.
So, it's very like the weird places that, at least in America, we went to before marriage.
Right.
Like it is truly screwed. So I am very glad for South Korea that this is kind of, we get it.
Yeah.
Which is basically what the Supreme Court has said at this point is, we get it.
Yeah.
It's not criminal, but it's also in a flux, and it's like it should be.
Right.
I wish it had been that simple and straightforward. Though I'm sure this was neither simple nor straightforward, but at least this simple and straightforward.
Right.
When that happened in the U.S.
I don't know. I look for South Korea to move forward and get the bills moving.
Potentially. I mean, it may take a while, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like there. Again, it kind of falls into that it's not criminal. It's just not.
Right.
It's not criminal. It's just not legally endorsed.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of an actual worse position to sometimes be in.
Mm-hmm.
Is There's not the same impetus of rage and outrage and anger fueling a push to get people there. And it can sometimes be harder to really articulate and get people to care about.
Right.
The fact that, well, yeah, you're kind of being discriminated.
Right.
Which is sort of where it ends up, is you don't have this like clear, like moral kind of panic moment.
Right.
Of like, this is atrocious. This shouldn't happen to people. We're gonna light a like this lights a fire.
Right.
You kind of have a bunch of, well, I mean, it would be nice.
Right.
It is mostly how it ends up kind of coming across.
Uh-huh. Well, and for me, I don't know, it just seems weird. It seems like these other countries that are behind us are pre-thinking, pre-moving in a better direction than what the Americas did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it does very much fall into the category of, well, it's better.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's its own downside.
Right.
Is like the world has evolved, the laws have it,
mm-hmm.
but we don't have the same situation to kind of push it, propel it forward.
Right. Well, we've had the equality bill, I think, for 15 years now, sitting on every senator's desk in the United States. Mm-hmm. And it just sits there, the same as they have in South Korea. It's just sitting in Parliament.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that has to do with of the amount of piecemeal work that has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
That, again, we're in a very similar position.
Right.
That we kind of got these incremental rights.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of a great big omnibus, like, kaboom, here's your rights.
Right.
I'm so sorry, we fucked up. There have been so many incrementals.
Right.
That trying to turn around and be like, oh, we're just going to, like, slap codify it across all of the law.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, who's hurting? Like, there's more important shit going on. Like, how do I sell this?
Well, but I also think that maybe South Korea is going to be looking to Indonesia, being the first Asian country to pass gay marriage and gay rights fully, and going, I want some of that. Like, did you see how much tourism they got there? We need some of that here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's usually going to be where it is. I think that's where it's going to end up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where it's ending up.
Right.
Though sometimes that's worse. Again, sometimes it's worse.
Right.
Because it doesn't have the same gravity.
Right.
So trying to get a bunch of people to show up and speak out and be part of the public comments and express how their lives are negatively impacted, and then have people be able to resonate with that, oh my God, that would be horrible. I would hate to live like that.
Right.
This is atrocious.
Yeah.
It kind of falls flat.
Right.
So tourism dollars will always ring up.
All right. So with that, let's see if you're the asshole this week.
All right. Am I the asshole for telling my wife that her hobby isn't a job and isn't helping our financial situation? My wife, 38 female, and I, 40 male, have been married for 10 years and have 3 kids, 9, 7, and 4. My wife, as a stay-at-home mom, has been ever since our first child was born. I work full-time and am blessed to make enough to provide a quality life for our family. We live modestly, and I'm very conscious about living above our means. By that, I mean we don't live paycheck to paycheck, but we also don't take yearly family vacations, don't buy designer items, still use hand-me-downs, etc. My wife has been extra stressed this summer with all 3 kids at home. When the 2 older ones are in school, she's fine, but the summer has been hard for her. I've adjusted my work schedule to allow me to spend more time at home to give her time for herself. I take the kids on bike rides, go to parks, swimming, fishing, etc. She has used the majority of this time on her hobby, crafting. She has an entire room dedicated solely to her hobby. She will sometimes sell some items she makes or takes on a specific project for a family, for a friend or family member, or the odd person from the internet. But sometimes I feel like she spends more time and effort on shopping for materials than she actually does crafting things. In short, there is no way her hobby has brought in more money than she has spent. Last week was an especially busy week at my job, and I was unable to flex my schedule to help at home during the workday. My wife complained to me that she needs more time, more help at home, and that I need to figure out ways to give her breaks. I told her that I'm doing the best I can, but my job keeps the roof over our heads, and I need to be at the office. That's what I'm going to do. Oh, and if I need to be at the office, that's what I'm going to do. She said that she has sold some items recently and that her hobby is helping us financially, so I should be doing more at home too. She told me it's basically become a part-time job for her in addition to taking care of the kids. I asked her to tell me exactly how much money she sold the items for and then looked up our most recent credit card statement to see how much she spent in the same time frame. Even with selling those items, she spent hundreds more on materials. Her excuse was that not all the materials were for the items she sold, but for other projects as well. I told her that her crafting isn't a job, it's a hobby, and it's not helping us financially. I told her that I'm glad she's selling items and spending time doing something she likes, but using that as an excuse to claim I'm not helping her enough is disingenuous at best, especially when I've taken extra steps to take on more childcare. She told me I was being a jerk for diminishing her contribution to her family, and I told her that is exactly what she did to me first, but at least I'm getting our family to a net positive financial situation. She is still mad at me and still thinks I need to do more to help.
What's your thoughts?
Oh, well, okay, so the explanation, let's read that real quick and then I'll go to my thoughts. So OP has offered the following explanation for why they think they might be the asshole. My wife claimed that her hobby is helping us financially, but she still spends more than she brings in. She's using it as an excuse to claim I don't help enough at home. I told her that her hobby isn't a job and is a net loss for our financial situation. I think I might be an asshole for telling my wife that her hobby doesn't count as a part-time job. Oh, I think you have a stay-at-home wife that doesn't want to be a stay-at-home wife. And I think that she was probably already aware of what you said and had that feeling, but hadn't actually done the math because she didn't want to know. I do think you're kind of the asshole in this situation for directly throwing that out at her. Because what you really needed to hear in this situation is that she's ready to return to work. And that what you really need to do is figure out a better, different childcare situation for her to be able to do that. I think you need to work with her to have her need for like value, commercial activity, financial contribution, seen and heard. Or this is potentially going to go from a hobby that's a net loss, full-fledged into a hoarding trauma.
See, I'm of a different mindset.
Okay.
He's an asshole.
Well, that's not a different mindset. I said he was the asshole. You just have a different reason.
Right.
Okay, what's your reason?
Maybe starting a crafting business. She might be producing crafts that sell. She's going to have to spend money for supplies. I mean, last night we dropped $55 for a project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and made a commitment to continue dropping money at it. For a project that hasn't brought us anything. If anything, it's costed us money. But
Well, and honestly, on that project, it's kind of at a point that, like, spending more money on it at this point just to try to realize anything from it is probably more of an emotional victory and worth it on that alone.
Right.
That and there's so many things wrong with the situation. And if we can go ahead and point out, that is actually one of your projects.
Yes.
That we had to throw money.
Right.
And at this point, given everything that's gone on with that one, and it's so hard not to actually talk about it, because it would kind of be inappropriate at this point.
Right.
And kind of subject to a lot of guesswork.
Right.
But the long and short of it is, you got roped into doing a project, and promised a lot of things about it, that unfortunately weren't delivered.
Right.
And it's kind of been a long-term, I've already spent money on it.
Right.
You worked really hard on it, and then it's kind of languished.
Right.
Not through any fault of your own. Like, you did the thing.
Right.
And so at this point, it's sort of trying to salvage it one last time and be like, okay, we're going to put this out here. And it deserves to be out here. It was a good damn project. Like, it's viable. It should be viable. It was viable. But the arrangement of the project kind of took you to the cleaners.
Well,
just dumped it off and was like, yeah, we're not touching that.
Right. And, this is where it's currently at. But at the same time, this is like, okay, fine. The same thing she's doing. She's having to buy stuff to make stuff. It's like the psychic jewelry stuff that's sitting behind me that I haven't gotten to touch yet. The book that I was working on today. Like, these are all projects that creatives make. When you start going, well, that's not important. That's not a real job to somebody. You're a dick. If she's made $3 on a thing that she, whatever, doesn't matter. She sold something, you're a dick.
I mean, I think there are very different conversations he could have had. Because fundamentally what I take from this is you're totally non-supportive of this.
Right.
And that's a problem.
Right.
I understand you're paying the bills. It definitely sounds like you're feeling stressed and uncomfortable.
Right.
Trying to balance this.
Right.
And I get that. I do get that. Especially when it's like, look, I'm already doing the things, all right? Like, back off. The reality is, you're not a bad spouse, but you're not giving, in this situation, you're giving what you want, not what she needs.
Exactly. See, I would have switched that conversation up to this. Okay, how many hours a day do you need? How many hours, since this is a part-time job, how many hours a week do you think you need to get the craft done, to get them listed? Like, what are we looking at?
Or more importantly, start at square one. What's your plan?
Right.
Like, it sounds like you have, if you don't have a fully fledged plan, you at least have an idea.
Right.
So what are you looking to do? How many hours are you looking to need?
Right.
What opportunities do we have to cover childcare during that? Like, what can we do? Can we dump the kids in camp, like space camp, summer camp? I don't care what camp, some camp. There's always an educational camp. There's always a church camp. There's always some camp.
Right.
Like the 14, I think wasn't it a 14-year-old? Oh no, 9, 7, and 4. Yeah, you're fine. You can dump all those kids in camp.
Right.
The 4-year-old might be a little, but if you have family, you can probably farm out the 4-year-old.
Exactly.
They're cute. They're adorable. Grandma's love them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like 7 and 9 are a little bit of a struggle bus because that's a weird age.
Mhm.
Not quite as bad as teenage.
Right.
Little worse than tween.
Right.
They're an awkward age.
Right.
They get into stuff without realizing they're getting into stuff, and then it's usually way over their head.
Right.
4-year-olds easy to farm out. Like they're pretty much,
Right.
they're pretty self-contained.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're easy. I'm just saying they're comparatively.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of options there. I think OP is just tired
Mm-hmm.
and just doesn't want to do the one more thing. And just really didn't have the understanding this isn't something you can just talk your way out of.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like having that moment where it's like, I don't want to fix dinner tonight. You don't want to fix dinner tonight. Let's not fix dinner tonight. But I don't want to go out either. So, or
Right. I'm getting really tired of our internet. Welcome back.
okay. So, but no, have that whole moment where it's like, I don't want to cook tonight. You don't want to cook tonight. I don't want to go out. We don't want to go out. Order a pizza, like figure out what everyone wants. I want no part of this. And you just kind of, like that's it. It's done.
Right.
I think that's sort of where he thought he was going to come into this and the amount of like energy he had for it.
Right.
And then it just turned hateful.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, once you detoured into hateful land, like we need to talk about your feelings and why you have a problem with your wife.
Mm-hmm.
To work.
Right.
Like, quite frankly, the 4-year-old's going to start school probably not this coming fall, but next fall.
Mm-hmm.
Or the fall after that, depending upon when they turn 4.
Right.
When they turn 5. So most likely next year.
Mm-hmm.
At which point all these kids are in school.
Yeah.
She has a solid amount of time during the day.
Right. Except during summers.
Yeah. And so it becomes a question of, okay, so what do we start doing in the summer to make this different?
Right.
Like you're already feeling a pinch that you can't work.
Right.
And I mean, to some degree, it may be a hobby. And if that's all it is, it really, truly, honestly, if all it is a hobby, if that's all the fruition that comes of it is sometimes it's a hobby that puts a little money back for the supplies.
Right.
Don't trash that. Don't trash that. Do not trash that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is sometimes the hardest thing in the world to find meaning and purpose. And there's a lot of people that find meaning and purpose through hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
Don't trash that. Because there's a lot worse things you can do than crafting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just saying, you don't want to attack it because there's worse things people can do. Hoarding is one of them. And that can sometimes happen with craft trauma.
Right.
Like, you have this fight, and it's not really craft trauma, but it's at you took the one thing that she had that made her feel good. Because, I mean, there's a lot of people, like, parenting just isn't the itch scratcher that you think it is.
Right.
it's cute you have this idea that being a stay-at-home wife and mom is, this great big giant fulfilling thing that's just supposed to be who she is now. A lot of people have that encountering moment of being a stay-at-home parent, that it doesn't do it.
Right.
Like, they want more.
Right.
So, as Brenda says, if it's craft supplies, it's not hoarding. There's debatables about that. Depending upon, because there are times that if you traumatize someone at the level of their ability to contribute to society, be financially sustaining, etc., you can set up a whole layer of trauma in which this becomes inertia with a spending spree. A lot of creative ideas and buying resources for them that gets hit with an inertia when they get home but it's not going to have any value or worth and no one cares about it.
Right.
And so it goes in a closet, it goes in a shelf, it goes in the attic, it goes in the garage, it goes into the craft room. The craft room fills up. It now becomes part of the hallway and the living room and the kitchen and the dining room and you think her spending is bad now?
But your spending may not be bad. He didn't say that it was bad. He just said, you've spent more on this than you've made.
No, what he said was it's a net loss. And it's really hard to hear those words and on not hear you have negative value.
Right.
You're hurting us.
Right.
We'd be better off without you. I'm sorry. If you look at your spouse and use the words net loss to describe something that brings them joy and happiness and fulfillment and scratches their itch for productivity, being a contributing member of society, no good comes to that. No one hears a positive thing.
Right. So the poll is up. Feel free to vote what you think. The options are: yes, he's an asshole. No, he's not an asshole. He's defending, no. Everyone's shitty here, or damn, you're a deal pickle. All right, so let's go over to poly-advise.
Oh, Lord, this is a long one. Can a platonic relationship also be considered a partner? I'm a cisgendered heterosexual woman. My best friend is a cisgendered gay man. I date. He is married. I'm also friends with his husband, but not nearly as close. My friend, he needs a name, so let's call him Alex, and I are close. And it was so instant, it almost seemed like a red flag at first, or like we were trauma bonding. I had to deliberately slow my roll with my friendship to really suss out what the deal was for several months. Nope, all good. We just bonded that tight. We're perfectly balanced in that there's 50% in the middle where we may as well be the same person, but 25% on each pole where we're very different. He's the people pleaser who would never send food back, even if he's deathly allergic. I'm sometimes too far the other way and that I can lack tact or a filter. We joke that we need to create a composite third person halfway between both of us who would probably be socially perfect. He's the ADHD chaotic and I'm more methodical and organized. It's honestly probably the healthiest friendship I've had. I love him even when I want to choke him, and I know he'd say the same. His husband, who also needs a name, so he'll be Brian, adores our friendship and loves that Alex has me. He says somehow you have a version of him that I don't even have, probably because I am his husband. He gets it. Sometimes he hangs out with Alex and I, which is great, but he also respects we need our own time together too. Their marriage is just as healthy. They're interdependent, not codependent. Alex and I are also decently affectionate. I think he's attractive, but even if he liked women, I just couldn't. We're almost too close. But I'll rest my head on his shoulder or fallen asleep crying on his chest when life's kicked my ass. We're cuddly because it's 1,000,000,000% platonic, like the comfort and affection of a brother. The safe place a sister can go when some dumb boy broke their heart and her protective brother is like, come here, need me to get the boy and make him disappear. And we'll hold her, being her ice cream and watch a cheesy rom-com he hates. There's nothing sexual about it at all. It's just a way to express affection that's felt and platonic love, and we truly do love one another. We even say it, but it's not romantic. It's just simply love. Everyone in the relationship is perfectly okay with it. Obviously, him and Brian are gay, and I think that's part of why it's so comfortable. It's a safe relationship with a man that's not exactly what it looks like. When he puts his hand on my knee affectionately, it's undoubtedly affection. He has no other motivation. Brian will sometimes even be like, y'all just rotted my teeth with this adorable shit. You two are disgustingly mushy. He absolutely means it positive. But Brian was like, how would your boyfriend feel? He was joking because obviously zero is going to happen between Alex and I, but just the same, it made me think. I mean, my boyfriend, who we'll name Kyle, is obviously also poly. I know he has one other partner, and I've met her a few times. I prefer to be mostly parallel, so I don't necessarily need a friendship with my partner's partners unless it happens organically. So obviously, I assume they're intimate and affectionate. But aside, Kyle, I'm not currently dating anyone else at the moment. Still, Brian's joke did give me pause. I hadn't thought of it because I don't see Alex as a sexual or romantic partner, a platonic soulmate, if I'm honest. Just another type of love that humans can feel. In a mono relationship, I obviously wouldn't expect a partner to be okay with Alex and I, which is why I'm not mono. I need to be able to express love, affection, infatuation, desire, all the ways we can connect with people when it's felt and mutual. I value the connection Alex and I have, and I wouldn't be okay with someone saying, he's gay, sure, or I know he's gay, but I'm not comfortable with you being that close with another man. I guess I'm just looking for opinions on whether or not I need to disclose my relationship with Alex to partners. He's not a romantic or sexual partner, but he is someone I'm physical with, possibly beyond what some would consider normal for a friendship. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here, just genuinely looking for takes and opinions. Oh my God, can you ever think this more?
Yes. They can go into it 50 different directions. He's a friend. Get over it. He's not your boyfriend. He's not going to be your boyfriend. He's not considered a boyfriend. He's a friend.
I mean, I think in terms, and not in the industry version of it that everyone gets icked with, and we've icked about on the show before. Yeah, you found your soulmate. If you really, want to go into the more cosmic, religious, spiritual, whatever, and that's who you are. Like if you were talking past lives, they may have been your husband or your wife or your child or whatever. And you're just closely knit to this person. You will always find each other. You may or may not be married and sexual. You may or may not be in a nuclear family. You may or may not, like, one way or another.
Right.
This is someone that you are deeply connected to, even if relationship-wise it doesn't work.
Right.
In the sense of, like, it can't be a romantic relationship. It can't be a sexual relationship. None of this is weird. I don't know why we've made this weird. When did we make this weird? Like, when did heterosexual men get this insecure?
Oh, honey, there are TikToks out there about, oh, your best friend's gay? Fine, you can blow me. From boyfriends. And I'm like, excuse me? Just because you're dating her doesn't mean that I like you too.
Yeah, like there's whole layers.
Right.
But no, even if he were a heterosexual male, she were a heterosexual female, this could totally be a relationship.
Right.
That doesn't mean it works either.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everyone thinks this is exactly what you want in a spouse and a partner, and this is the gold standard and where you're supposed to be at. Not always. Not really. Sometimes you just need someone to be a friend. Like, even if it could work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just need a friend. And you lose that. Like, you do lose something.
Right.
And that, like, I know, a little bit controversial, and like, maybe take it for as much mileage varies as possible. But for some people, the idea that my partner is my best friend and my soulmate and my everything and my world, and we're just basically the same person, is like some scary fucking shit.
Agreed.
And it's like, no, dear God, no. Right. It is where their reaction is at. It's like, no. I find the perfect man, I'm keeping him as a friend. Like, that's it. Oh, don't look at me like that. I'm just saying, as an ideological, some people, it just can be mutually exclusive with who they actually want to be romantic with.
Right.
That, again, it's like we have this idea of what the perfect husband is. And so many people are out there, like, having this moment of monogamous people, especially, on, like, I was the perfect husband. I, did all the chores, and I cleaned the house, and I worked 80 hours a week, and I did this thing and that thing and this other thing. And I always made sure we had money, and she had everything she wanted, and the kids had everything they wanted, and she cheated on me. And everyone's like, what the fuck is the dumb bitch's problem?
Mm-hmm.
That's not what she wanted.
Right.
You're not the husband for her. I'm sorry you got cheated on, and that sucks, and it's horrible, and you're a great potential husband for someone else entirely.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry your first marriage or second or third or how many times you married someone who does this to you didn't work out.
Right.
But either you're looking for the wrong person or the wrong people keep finding you. Yeah. Mostly under the guise of you ought to marry this kind of person. That's not how it works. If it did, we would have one model of human being that would get married.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be it. Everyone else, anyone who doesn't want to follow that, would just be over here in single land forever.
Right.
Because it's not, but that's not how that works.
Well, not only that, but that's not how this all works in general. But what my problem with this poster is they're looking to fill in for a relationship and classify it into something that it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
A deep friendship is still a friendship.
Yeah.
It's not a relationship.
Yeah. It's a very different thing. And sometimes there's a different kind of deeper intimacy that occurs between friends that can occur between spouses,
Right.
and vice versa. Like, like there's trade-offs in that,
Mhm.
and that's okay.
Right. All right. So we have some commentary here.
Oh, so Brenda says I've made friends like that. Last ex didn't take it well, but some people you're just comfortable with being close to, but not sexually. Male friends like that. And then she says, "Ooh, Joe." Well, yeah, I know. I saw his face too, and it's like, calm down. It's not a bad thing.
Uh-huh.
What?
None. I'm just being mean.
Uh-huh.
All right. So let's go check out your poll. Someone get the vinegar and salt. We got to deal him up.
Pickle?
Yes.
What the hell?
I know, right?
I think some people just enjoy voting for dill pickle.
No. So anyway, we do have a new patron. We want to welcome to the Patreon, Maria Myers. Welcome aboard.
Yes. So, of course, we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda, Joan Owen, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Charles Shaw, Tracy Van, Caitlin Bell, Devin, and Maria Meyer. So if you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon sponsor and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yes, and we will see you guys on Sunday at 5 p.m. Good night, y'all.
Good night.